So after studying this module, you shall be able to understand or learn about the t-distribution, which is very extensively used in the problems dealing with the population mean and proportion involving one sample as well as two comparable samples. You would also learn in detail how the t variable is constructed, what are its properties, and how do we determine the area under the t density curve. You would also learn in detail how the t values they behave as the parameter of the t distribution or the significance level changes. We would also know two of its applications, the estimation of confidence interval and hypothesis testing for a population mean mu based on one sample. In our earlier module, one of the earlier modules on Z distribution, we had learned in detail that if a random sample is drawn from a normal population with a specified mean mu and variance sigma square, then sampling distribution of the sample mean will also be normally distributed with mean same as the population mean, which is mu, and variance denoted as sigma square by n. Therefore, in order to determine probabilities or area under the curve, the standard normal random variable z defined as x bar minus mu upon sigma by root n can be used. We have also seen that for a given value of mean mu and variance sigma square, even if population distribution is unknown, yet the above result remain valid, with a qualifier approximately provided that the sample size is large, that is n is greater than or equal to 30. Now this is justifiable due to the application of central limit theorem. However, very often we come across cases where population variance sigma square is unknown. Practically speaking, sigma is rarely known. The apparent answer to this would be to use sample variance as a square in place of population variance sigma square, and the standardized normal variable would be then given as z equal to x bar minus mu upon s by root n. So we have replaced sigma by s because we said sigma, which is the population standard error, is not known, and therefore we estimate it from the sample s. The pertinent question here is, will this z now, which is equal to x bar minus mu upon s, still be normally distributed with mean 0 and variance 1? I hope you can recollect that for a standard normal variate, mean is equal to 0 and the variance is always equal to 1. Now this result would hold true but with a qualification, and we will distinguish such cases under two heads. One, consider the case where the form of the population distribution as well as variance are unknown. In such cases, sample standard deviation s would replace population standard deviation sigma, and the new standard normal variate would be defined as z equal to x bar minus mu upon s by root n. We must understand here that this new z becomes more variable than the z defined with the population standard deviation sigma. This is so because in the earlier case, randomness is there in both the numerator as well as the denominator on account of the presence of x bar in the numerator and s in the denominator. The values of both x bar and s change from one sample to another sample. As a result of the distribution of the new z is more spread out around the center than the earlier z defined with sigma in the denominator. However, the new z would still be approximately normally distributed if this small n, which is our sample size, is sufficiently large. So as a rule of thumb, if n is greater than 40, the random variable z equal to x bar minus mu upon s by root n has approximately a standard normal distribution. Now this is an application of the central limit theorem known as CLT. However, owing to the additional variability by virtue of the use of s instead of sigma in the z, the size of the sample required is more conservative than the earlier size of 30. The second point is that what happens when the population distribution is known to be normal, but the variance of the population is unknown and the size of the sample is small. So we have a small size, we have a situation where sigma is not known, but the distribution is known. In such cases, the central limit theorem cannot be invoked because substitution of s in place of sigma in the value z will make it more spread out around its center than the standard normal variable. Now this is due to the fact that the value of s fluctuates greatly from sample to sample. So in order to draw inferences for sampling distribution of sample means in such cases, we introduce another family of probability distributions which are called t-distributions. So what is a t-distribution? Let us first define t-distribution. If a random sample with size n is drawn from a normal population with given mean mu, then a random variable t is defined as t equal to x bar minus mu upon s upon root n. And this has a probability distribution termed as t-distribution with degrees of freedom equal to 1 less than the size of the sample. That means n minus 1 in our current case. Here s is defined as equal to under root of sigma xi minus x bar square divided by n minus 1. And x bar is nothing but sigma xi, I from 1 to n divided by n. It is important to notice here that the same formula we used earlier for z. Then why now is it being denoted as a new variable t? Now this is because the size of the sample is small here, and as a result t distribution deviates considerably from that of the standard normal distribution. It is the substitution of s in place of sigma that makes t more variable than the standard normal variable z. So basically it is the substitution of s in place of sigma that we have a new distribution known as the t distribution. How do we construct the t variable? Let us understand this. By definition, if y and z are two independent random variables where y is equal to, let's say, n minus 1 into s square divided by sigma square and has a chi-square distribution with n minus 1 degrees of freedom, and z is equal to x bar minus mu upon sigma by root n has a standard normal variable, then the variable t which is constructed is as t is equal to z upon under root of y by n minus 1. If you substitute the value of z and of y, then you will find that we get x bar minus mu upon sigma by root n in the numerator, and in the denominator we have the under root of n minus 1 into s square divided by sigma square into n minus 1. On simplification we get this equal to x bar minus mu upon s upon under root n. Now this has a t distribution with n minus 1 degrees of freedom. So as the density function of t distribution is more complicated than the normal density function, we have avoided writing that here. But let us understand what are the properties of this t distribution. The t distribution has only one parameter, which is the number of degrees of freedom, and generally in our abbreviated form written as df. Or we also use the Greek letter nu, or which is written almost similar to v but different, and we read it as nu. And this in turn depends upon the size of the sample. The distribution is said to be completely specified if the value of this degree of freedom is known. Therefore, the t distribution is denoted as t nu, implying it is always defined for a given degrees of freedom nu. The values that degree of freedom can take are the positive integers starting from 1, 2, 3 up to any number n. As the value of degree of freedom increases, we can show that the TV or the T curve becomes less spread out and more concentrated at the center. I can show it in your figure 1. So unlike Z distribution, the T distribution is a family of distribution. Whereas in Z distribution we had one unique curve, here the curve depends upon the degrees of freedom, and with each degree of freedom it will basically gets concentrated and centered around the value. So you have these different curves for corresponding to degrees of freedom 1, 5, 10 and so on. You can observe that each t nu curve is centered at 0, suggesting that expected value of t nu is equal to 0. We can also see, and we have seen earlier also, that each t nu curve is a bell-shaped curve and symmetric about its mean, which is 0. Thus it indicates that probability that t nu is greater than or equal to 0 is the same as probability t nu less than or equal to 0 and is equal to 0.5. Also, we can say that the t nu curve has thicker tails, suggesting that it has greater variability than the standard normal curve, which we can show in figure 2. The variance of t curve depends on the size of the sample and is always greater than 1. So we can write down that the variance of t nu will be equal to nu upon nu minus 2, where nu is greater than 2. And nu, please let me repeat, is nothing but the degrees of freedom. So our degrees of freedom must be greater than 2. However, as nu increases, the variance of t nu tends to be equal to 1, because you may find that the difference between the numerator and the denominator would tend to be small. And this t nu curve in that case approaches the standard normal curve. So as nu tends to infinity, the two curves become the same, because as we said, the variance would tend to be equal to 1. So we have this diagram where you can compare the t density with 5 degrees of freedom and standard normal density, how they are different and how they could tend to be equal as we increase these degrees of freedom. Let us try to understand the interpretation of the degrees of freedom in this section 3.4. So before proceeding further, it is essential to explain the concept of degrees of freedom and why its value is equal to n minus 1 in our current case. The computation of sample standard deviation S is based on the square root of the sum of the square deviations of the sample observations from its mean, which means these are equal to x1 minus x bar square, x2 minus x bar square, and so on up to xn minus x bar square. So in order to compute standard deviation, this x bar must be known, which means we have to estimate this x bar. However, an important property of mean is that the sum of the deviations of the observations from the mean is always equal to 0, which I am sure you know, and we can rewrite it as summation xi minus x bar, where summation is of I from 1 to n is equal to 0. So the number of freely determined deviations are not equal to n, which is the size of the sample. Rather, it is 1 less than that, or n minus 1. The degree of freedom stands for the number of freely determined deviations that are there on which the estimation of S is based upon. So we have total n deviations, but the freely determined deviations are 1 less than the n, and that is why we have n minus 1. Let us now try to discuss how to determine the area under the T curve, or I may also call it as T nu curve. In order to determine the probability or probabilities or area under the T distribution, which is also given in your appendix table A2, which is titled curve tail areas, and this is attached for your ready reference, otherwise you can have it from any other textbook. Now this table tabulates area under the T curve that lies to the right of the given value of T and degrees of freedom, which means it gives us the probability that T is greater than or equal to T nu. The first column in the table gives values of T up to 1 decimal point, and the first row gives the value of the parameter, that means the degrees of freedom corresponding to which T curve is defined. Notice this table gives probabilities only for positive values of T, starting from 0.0 up to 4, and corresponding to all values of degrees of freedom from 1 up to 30, and beyond that with an increment of 5, 10, 20. The last value of degrees of freedom is when T curve approaches normal distribution, that means when n tends to be infinity. So that the values in the cell corresponding to the intersection of the T value and the degree of freedom defines the probability to the right of the value of T. For example, if the area to the right, let's say of T15 is equal to 1.8 is to be found, we can see the intersection of 1.8 in the first column and 15 in the first row, and the corresponding cell gives us 0.046. That means the probability T15 greater than or equal to 1.8 is equal to 0.046. Now, since the curve is symmetric in nature, which we have shown in our figure 3 also, therefore this implies that the probability of T15 less than minus 1.8 is also equal to 0.046. So this means area to the right of 1.8 and to the left of minus 1.8 is 0.046. This further implies that the area covered between 1.8 and minus 1.8 is equal to 0.908, which means the probability T15 is between 1.8 and greater than or equal to minus 1.8 is equal to 1 minus 0.046 plus 0.046, hence is equal to 0.908. So for that reason, if the area to the left of a certain negative value of T nu is to be found, we can simply see corresponding to the same positive value for a given degrees of freedom. As we have said, the table gives probabilities only for positive values of T nu. Further, if the area to the left of a positive value of T nu is to be found, then we need to subtract probability to the right of that value, which we can see from the table, from 1 for a given value of degrees of freedom. For example, suppose we want to find out probability that T15 is less than or equal to 1.5. Now this is equal to 1 minus probability of T15 greater than 1.5, greater than or equal to 1.5, and is equal to 1 minus 0.077, and therefore comes out to be equal to 0.923. Let us take some examples to understand this concept and the use of these T tables. So the example which we are saying is, please find the following, which means find out the following probabilities. A, probability that T12 is less than or equal to 1.2. Similarly, probability that T29 is greater than or equal to minus 1.5 but is less than or equal to 1.2, and C part could be that probability T20 is greater than or equal to minus 2.3. and D could be that probability T10 is less than or equal to minus 1.9. What is the solution to these parts? If you go part by part, let us see the first part. The first part is that probability T12 is less than 1.2. Now this is equal to 1 minus T12 greater than or equal to 1.2, and this is equal to 1 minus 0.127 from our tables, and therefore is equal to 0.873. So since the table on the T curve area gives probability to the right of T nu only, so we need to see the probability in the cell that corresponds to the intersection of T 1.2, which is our first column, in the first column, and degrees of freedom 12 in the first row. So the cell will correspond to the 1.2 in the column and 12 in the row. So subtracting this from 1 gives the probability to the left of 1.2 on the T12 curve. So we have calculated the probability to the left of a value. Similarly, if we have to calculate probability of T29 between minus 1.5 and plus 1.2, here area on both the sides of the curve is to be excluded, which means to the left of T29 and with the minus 1.5 value, and also to the right of T29 where the value is 1.2. So from 1 we subtract both the areas. How do we find out these areas? So the area to the left of minus 1.5, we can see the area to the right of the same positive value because they would be equal. So what are these values? These values therefore are that probability of T29 greater than or equal to minus 1.5 and less than or equal to 1.2 is equal to 1 minus probability T29 is greater than or equal to 1.2 minus probability T29 is greater than or equal to 1.5, and therefore this comes out to be equal to 1 minus 0.120 minus 0.072, and if you simplify this you find out it comes out to be equal to 0.808. Let us look at part C. In part C we said, or we are required to find out probability of T20 greater than or equal to minus 2.3, and this again by our previous logic is equal to 1 minus T20 greater than or equal to 2.3. Again, if you look at the values from the table, you find it is equal to 1 minus 0.016 and is equal to 0.984. Similarly, if you look at the part D, where probability expected to be calculated is of T10 less than or equal to minus 1.9, again I am sure we can see that this is equal to probability T10 greater than or equal to 1.9. And if you look at the table corresponding and the cell value corresponding to T equal to 10 and the probability 1.9, we get the value 0.043. So I hope this example clarifies to you and makes you understand how do we find out different possible probabilities and use the T tables. Let us now find out or obtain the T critical values. That how do we find out the T critical values? Most commonly, the T distribution is used for inferential statistics, which requires knowledge of T nu values with the specified tail area on either or both sides of the distribution. For this, we use the concept of T critical values. Often, the notation used for this is that T, alpha and nu. So, or we can also say it is equal to T alpha comma nu, which we generally read as T alpha nu. Now, this signifies a value for a T curve with nu degrees of freedom to the right of which alpha area lies. So, alpha is the area to the right of this distribution. Now, for example, if you say that we have T 0.05 comma 13, this stands for that value of T curve with degrees of freedom 13 to the right of which 5% of the area lies. So alpha is 0.05, therefore it is 5%, and 13 is the degrees of freedom. For such selected critical values, we use table A.3 titled as critical values for T distributions, and you can see that from the appendix which we have attached here. The first row of this table gives the 7 values of alpha, which correspond to 0.10, 0.05, 0.025, 0.01, 0.005, 0.001, and 0.0005. And the first column tabulates different values of degrees of freedom which are new. So to obtain T 0.025, 20, which means T value for 20 degrees of freedom and alpha value being 0.025, we look at the value given at the intersection of alpha equal to 0.025 column and rho corresponding to degrees of freedom nu equal to 20. So you will find out the corresponding values of row and columns. The value is equal to 2.086. The value I am talking about is corresponding to 20 degrees of freedom and alpha equal to 0.025. This means that the area under T20 curve to the right of 2.086 is equal to 2.5%. Similarly, we can find out other values also. For example, it could be T 0.01 and 24 degrees of freedom, which is equal to 2.492, obtained from the intersection of alpha equal to 0.01 column and degrees of freedom of 24 row, or 24, which is the row 24th. Similarly, if I define T equal to 0.10, 10, then we find it is equal to 1.372, which is again the value at the intersection of alpha equal to 0.10 and column and nu equal to 10 row. So as mentioned earlier, the T curves are symmetric about 0, therefore minus T alpha nu captures area on the left side of the T nu curve, and therefore it is called the left-tailed area. So we are saying the left-tailed area and the right-tailed area would be all same for the same alpha and the same degrees of freedom. So we can write minus T alpha nu equal to T 1 minus alpha nu, which means the area to the right of a negative T nu value is equal to 1 minus alpha. So that is also a method to write down these areas. Let's take another example, example 2, and determine the T value with degrees of freedom 16 that leaves an area of 0.975 to the right. So what we are saying is area to the right is 0.975, the degrees of freedoms are 16. How do you find out the solution? We know that T1 minus alpha nu is equal to minus T alpha nu. And further, we also know that T distribution is symmetric, therefore it doesn't matter whether we have the negative of T nu or we have the positive of T nu. The negative of T alpha nu gives alpha area to the left. Therefore, T 0.975, 16 degrees of freedom nu is equal to minus T 0.025, 16, which in turn can be found from the T 0.025 for 16 degrees of freedom. So from the table A3, we find that the value of this T is equal to 2.120. That gives us 0.025 area to the right. Thus, minus 2.120 gives an area which is 0.25 to the left or 0.975 to the right side. So we can conclude that the T value corresponding to 0.975 and 16 degrees of freedom is equal to minus 2.120. We can have another example for better clarification, and let us try now to find out the probability that t is between two limits, and let's say it is greater than or equal to t 0.025 for a degrees of freedom nu and t or less than equal to t 0.01 for the same degrees of freedom nu. So what is the solution? Now this required probability, one can see from the table, is equal to nothing but 1 minus 0.025 plus 0.01, which means this 0.025 and 0.01 are in the bracket. We are adding these two together, and this on simplification comes out to be equal to 0.965. So from 1 we have subtracted the combined value 0.025 and 0.01, which is for any given degrees of freedom nu, the value minus t 0.025 and nu leaves an area 2.5% to the left, and t 0.01 nu leaves an area of 1% to the right. So the sum of the two areas, which is 3.5% on both the tails, is to be subtracted from 1 to get the area covered between the two values. So here the areas which we are subtracting, the upper tail area and the lower tail area, are not equal. The lower tail area is 2.5% and the upper tail area or right tail area is 1%. Now, what are the notable observations in the behavior of t critical values? What have we observed? Let us see some of these observations. A careful examination of critical values of t distribution table, we find that t alpha nu values exhibit a regular pattern as we either change alpha values keeping nu fixed or vice versa, which means moving either across a particular row or down a column. What is that basically regular pattern? We can say the first is that as we move across a row, implying keeping degrees of freedom nu as fixed at a specified level, we can see from this table that the t values continue to increase. This is because by moving across a row, alpha decreases, which means area to the right continues to fall. Hence, T alpha nu value must rise to capture greater area to its left, which is 1 minus alpha. For example, if we move along row corresponding to degrees of freedom equal to 15, and as alpha changes from 0.10 to 0.05 to 0.025, the T value increases from 1.341, 1.353 to 2.131 respectively. The second thing which we can observe is that on the other hand, as you move down any column, meaning for a fixed alpha, as nu is increased, then the T alpha nu value decreases. The reason for this is that increased degree of freedom is on account of larger sample size, which in turn leads to less spread in the distribution. So further, as the distribution becomes more concentrated towards the center, a smaller T alpha nu will capture a given tail area. The third thing which we have observed and which you can see minutely, again going back to the table, is additionally that as degrees of freedom increases, the T alpha nu value decreases. However, the rate of decrease is much slower at higher values of degrees of freedom than at lower values. To take an example, at alpha equal to 0.10 or decimal 10, when degrees of freedom increases from 2 to 3, the T value changes from 1.886 to 1.638. And when the change is from 28 to 29, the same one change, the T alpha nu changes marginally from 1.313 to 1.311. As a result of this, for values of degrees of freedom from 30 to 40, the T alpha nu values are given with jump of 2 and from 40 to 60 with an increment of 10, because the changes are very marginal. The last observation, the D observation perhaps could be that as n approaches infinity, the t distribution is same as the standard normal distribution. Therefore, the values that appear in the last row are same as Z alpha, as that of Z alpha. So, for practical purpose, beyond n greater than 40 or n greater than 40, or as sample size increases to more than 40, Z and T alpha nu values can be used and are used interchangeably. Let's take an example, example 4. Find k such that the probability that t is greater than or equal to k but less than or equal to minus 1.345 is equal to 0.095 for a random sample of 15 drawn from a normal distribution, and t is defined as x bar minus mu upon or divided by s by root n, which is the same standard definition of our t distribution. So, what is the solution to this example? From the table A.3, we can see that corresponding to the row when degrees of freedom is equal to 14, which is 15 minus 1 n minus 1, the critical value of t equal to 1.345 appears at alpha equal to 0.10. Therefore, the value of t equal to minus 1.345 suggests that 10% of the area is captured to the left tail. Further, since the area covered between k and 1.345 is 0.095, it implies that 0.005, which is 0.10 minus 0.095 area, lies to the left of k. From the table we see the critical values of t corresponding to alpha equal to 0.005 is 2.977. Since this area is to the left, therefore k is equal to minus 2.977. Therefore, the required probability of t greater than or equal to 2.977 minus 2.977 and less than or equal to minus 1.345 is equal to 0.095. Let us now look at some of the applications of the t distribution. The t distribution is extensively used in problems relating to inferential statistics. It is used for interval estimation and testing of hypotheses concerning population mean and proportion of a single sample. Further, its application is also extended to the two samples cases as well. For example, confidence interval estimation of or for the difference between two sample means and proportions, and also testing whether the two sample means or sample proportions are significantly different. We will take some examples of these. So here we present only two applications related to one sample. The other applications are covered in detail in another module on two sample inferences. Those who are interested in these two samples can refer to those module or that module. So let us first look at the application of the t distribution in the case of confidence interval estimates for a population mean mu. Here we are assuming that sigma is unknown and we have the small sample size. So when the population distribution is known to be normal and size of the sample under consideration is small, the t distribution is used to determine the two limits within which the population mean is expected to lie with a given level of confidence. Now, using the following formula, we obtain 1 minus alpha into 100% confidence interval estimates for the population mean mu, where alpha by 2 is the area which lies to the both to the left as well as in the right tails. So we have x bar minus t alpha by 2 nu into s by root n, which is less than or equal to mu and is less than or equal to x bar plus t alpha by 2 nu into s by root n. So this basically means that mu lies between these two intervals, the lower limit and the upper limit, and the limits are formed around x bar and the s by root n, which is the standard error of x bar. Here you can therefore observe that the left and the right hand expression of this equation, they give the estimates of lower and upper limits of the interval respectively. Let's take an example to understand this. Suppose in order to determine 98% confidence interval for the average of a company's monthly sales invoices, a sample of 25 sales invoices during a month is chosen. The sample mean and standard deviations were found to be rupees 129 and 30 respectively, which means the sample mean came out to be rupees 129 and the standard deviation came out to be rupees 30. What is the solution? The solution is that since 1 minus alpha is equal to 0.98 or 0.98, alpha is equal to 0.02. Therefore, alpha by 2 will be equal to 0.01. Now, from the table A.3, we find that the two critical t values are plus minus t alpha by 2 nu and plus minus t 0.0124. Because our nu is 24 and our alpha by 2 now, as we have said earlier, comes out to be 0.01. So this table gives us the corresponding value as plus minus 2.492. Applying this formula, we obtain 129 minus 2.492 into 30 by root 25 is the lower limit, and the upper limit for this mu therefore becomes equal to 129 plus 2.492 into 30 by root n. Therefore, the 98% confidence limits within which average monthly sales of a company are expected to lie comes out to be equal to 114.05 and 143.95 on simplification of the values which we have discussed. Let us now move on and try to understand the application to hypothesis testing for a population mean mu where sigma is unknown and we still have the small sample size. So I hope you understand that earlier we have seen the confidence interval estimation, and now we are discussing about the hypothesis testing for a population mean mu. Now again, for testing of hypothesis regarding population mean, t-distribution is used whenever size of the sample is small and population standard deviation is unknown. It must be kept in mind that for the application of t-distribution, the population is assumed to be normally distributed. Let us take an example. This is our example 6. Suppose in a 35 half an hour test runs of a train, average petrol consumption was 13 liters with a standard deviation of 2 liters. The engine driver asserts that the average petrol consumption of this train is 12 liters per 30 minutes run. Assuming normal distribution, test the assertion of the engine driver of the train and use a 5% significance level. So how will you do it? Let me give you the solution here. To test this claim on the basis of the sample data, we need to calculate t-value. So to see whether it lies in the rejection or non-rejection region, we find the two critical values for both the sides of the distribution from table A3. Now since alpha is equal to 0.05, which is specified, therefore alpha by 2 comes out to be 0.025. From the table you can see that the critical t value of plus minus t alpha by 2 nu now is t plus minus the degrees of freedom equal to 34 and the alpha by 2 is equal to 0.025. So we want to calculate t 0.025 for 34 degrees of freedom, and I'm sure you can see from the table that this comes out to be equal to plus minus 2.032. We are writing plus minus because you know that the values will be same on the right hand side as well as on the left hand side. The null hypothesis is that H naught is equal to 12, and our alternative hypothesis is that HA, which we denote as alternative, that it is not equal to 12. So this 12 is the assertion of the driver, and therefore we can write this as the average petrol consumption. So I can also write this null hypothesis differently, and I can say H naught is that mean consumption mu is equal to 12, and alternative hypothesis I can write is that mu is not equal to 12. So now T is equal to x bar minus mu upon S by root n, and this is 13 minus 12 upon 2 divided by under root of 35, and this comes out to be 1 upon 0.34 and is equal to 2.94. Now, since this calculated T value lies beyond the two critical values, we reject the claim that the average petrol consumption of this train is 12 liters per 30-minute run. Now, the T distribution is also very extensively used in problems that involve comparative samples called the two-sample tests, especially when one or both the samples are small, such that testing two means, which means whether the two samples have been drawn from the two populations having the same means. It can also be used for testing two proportions, which means comparing the difference between the proportions of two populations using two samples, as well as estimating the confidence interval for the difference between the two population parameters, in particularly means and proportions. It can also be used for testing means of paired data, which means testing whether the difference between two samples that are drawn from the related or dependent populations. So this happens when the observations are paired or matched according to some characteristics, or repeated observations are made from the same set of data. As said earlier, all these applications of T distribution are covered in our separate module on two-sample inferences. Anyone interested in these applications are advised to go to that module. So what have we learned today in this module, in this entire discussion so far? I think we have learned in this module about T distribution, which we have said is extensively used for inferential analysis of small samples. We have also learned that the T distribution is used when the population distribution is known to be normal and the variance of the population is unknown and the size of the sample is small. You have also learned that the T distribution is bell-shaped, symmetric around 0, has single parameter, and has greater spread than the normal distribution. However, we have seen that as the sample increases, the T curve approaches the standard normal curve. The table of T distribution for a given degrees of freedom gives area only to the right side of the distribution of a given T value. And if T alpha therefore captures alpha area on the right hand side of the T curve, its symmetric property implies that minus T alpha captures area on the left side. So right side area and the left side areas are equal for the same degrees of freedom. We have also learned that it is widely applied, this T distribution, for both hypothesis testing and interval estimation relating to one sample mean and proportion, as well as for two sample means and proportions.